Welcome to Sustainability This Month, your go-to source for the latest updates in the world of sustainability. I am Mala Panjwani and I'm here all excited to welcome you all and guide you through today's program, where we will cover the key developments and trends in the field of sustainability. Brought to you by the Forum for Sustainable Enterprises, this broadcast will today delve into the most pressing issues and advancements across the three crucial areas: sustainability reporting, the global glance for sustainable development goals, and India's position in the SDG index. So let's begin. With the increasing regulatory requirements and stakeholder expectations, companies are stepping up their reporting game. Let's now dive into the key developments into the same. The first one is the International Sustainability Standards Board, that is ISSB, has assumed the role of monitoring the progress of climate-related disclosures, which was previously overseen by the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, TCFD. Now, this change marks a culmination of the TCFD's work, with the ISSB set to provide a more unified and coherent approach to sustainability disclosures, addressing investor and stakeholder demands for more comprehensive and standardized reporting. The IFRS S2 climate-related disclosures rules are deeply rooted in the framework and recommendations established by TCFD. It has been found out that despite efforts, even the most diligent climate compliance reporting entities currently just meet over 50% of the cross-industry disclosure requirements, which are set out by the IFRS S2. This actually indicates a significant gap in comprehensive reporting practices. Well, there is an urgent need for companies to significantly enhance their data gathering and disclosure efforts. Achieving full alignment with IFRS S2 is essential for steering best practices in climate-related financial reporting. Joining us to discuss this update is CA Priyanka Potana, the MD and CEO of General Carbon Advisory. Priyanka ma'am holds extensive experience in the financial, media, and technology sectors and has been actively involved in the startup world, contributing to sustainable initiatives and green product retailing. So I would request ma'am to share thoughts on what, according to her, could be the strategies that companies can employ to improve their compliance with IFRS S2 standards and close the current disclosure gaps. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mala. So as Mala has also already briefed us about how there is a culmination of, the previously known as TCFD and how it has now become the IFRS S2. So there are many prominent differences which have been noticed between the two standards, which range between all the four categories which we were addressing earlier: governance, metrics and targets, risk strategy, etc. And there is a very detailed publication made also by IFRS S2, which very particularly points out the differences. Very prominent differences which I want to highlight, before we understand that what are the steps or the strategies that need to be employed are: there is obviously industry-based metrics that is expected. There is information required with respect to the use of carbon credits. There is a lot of additional information which is required around targeted and financed emissions if you are in the BFSI sector. There is a calculation which is very specifically given towards the scope 3 GHG accounting. So these are some of the, I've just taken a very prominent differences or additional requirements which need to be taken care. There are many more apart from these as well. Now, when we are considering these differences or changes that has happened, we have seen that there is a very low disclosure. Now, I will just want to highlight some, very three particular pointers where, you can understand where there is extremely low disclosure. One of which is there is absolutely 0% disclosure when it comes to adjusting the climate risks and opportunities towards the carrying amount of your assets and liabilities. What I mean to say here is that the value at which your assets and liability lie in your balance sheet, there are very few organizations, or literally zero organizations today, who are actually in financial terms making a change towards this carrying amount when it comes to climate risks and opportunities. Again, there is absolutely zero disclosure on processes for reviewing targets for companies for indirect adaptation and mitigation efforts. There are some efforts which are absolutely direct. For example, if putting extra air conditioning, it's a very obvious and a direct impact. But there are a lot of indirect impacts which are not accounted for in terms of quantitative disclosures. Now, also, there is a 0% of disclosure by companies when it comes to climate resilience in relation to existing financial resources, especially when it comes to repurposing, upgrading, or decommissioning of their assets. This kind of impact is also still not being recorded by many companies. Now, these are some of the areas or the gaps which I have highlighted when it comes to the disclosures. Now, definitely, obviously, to overcome this, the companies need to have a strategy as to how they are going to do this. So definitely, it may sound very basic, but this is the only way that organizations can move towards it. Firstly, there has to be a great enhancement on the governance and the oversight. There has to be I would say, a realignment or refinement of climate risks and opportunities in a very practical, and there is a need of redefinition there. There is a requirement of robust data collection and reporting systems. Obviously, many organizations who are looking at climate risk assessment will already have a decent data analysis tools and robust data collection, but there is a need to incorporate this as well when it robustly incorporate the climate risks and opportunities also in the existing data collection systems. There is a need for absolute capacity building and awareness sessions across the organizations to collect this kind of appropriate data, and obviously having a very robust transition plan when it comes to looking at these disclosures. So especially the financial disclosures or the quantitative disclosures need a very, very robust transition plan. And there has to be a real concurrence when it comes to the top management of the organizations. They really need to be aligned to this strategy, because this requires a huge amount of disclosures. The level of disclosures in S2 have increased drastically, and the robustness and I would say the depth of disclosures has increased. So there has to be a concurrence across the organization when it comes to disclosing these aspects publicly and clearly. So that's it from my side, Mala. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your detailed insights on the strategies. Next, we move on to, in June 2024, the International Financial Reporting Standards, IFRS Foundation, introduced an updated guide that links the integrated reporting, which is IR framework, with the ISSB standards. Now, this guide offers a phased approach, allowing organizations to implement the IR framework principles over 1, 2, or 3 reporting cycles, improving comparability and best practices. For those who are well versed in integrated reporting, this guide provides insights on embedding IFRS S1 and S2 disclosures in their reports. The guide is designed for entities worldwide, whether in developing or developed countries, that are focused on enhancing their sustainability and climate disclosures. To understand this update in more detail, we have Dr. Kiran Paradkar here joining us. Dr. Kiran is the Director of Sustainability Reporting at General Carbon Advisory. With over 2 decades of experience across various domains, Dr. Paradkar has authored over 15 publications in reputable SCI journals. I would request ma'am to shed some light on how companies can effectively transition to these new reporting standards while maintaining transparency. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mala. Uh, Basically, for a smooth transition, those organizations which are already doing TCFD, it will become a little easier for them to uh, adapt quickly to the changing scenario. However, reporting with ISSB is otherwise also going to be a smooth transition if we take care of few things. For example, if we understand the core alignments and what are the differences, for example, both have a shared focus. Both frameworks, emphasize the connection between the financial implications and sustainability. So if you know that what are your material issues and how these material issues are going to impact you financially, so focusing on them, on these significant issues, is going to be the crux of the reporting when you transition to ISSB. Also, to note here, one important aspect is stakeholder engagement. Stakeholder engagement here now becomes more important, for identifying the correct material topics and taking into cognizance all the aspects that are relevant to our business. Extensively engaging with our stakeholders inside and outside is going to give us a 360-degree view of what is important to us. The differences basically are based on, while IR focuses on creation of what value we create over time, basically, it is a value creation, depiction. ISSB standards, on the other hand, prioritize the, decision useful information, so that investors can take a look at the numbers or the disclosures and decide as to whether they want to go ahead with a certain business. So what you will be disclosing based on ISSP is going to be of major relevance to investor community apart from other stakeholders. Another aspect which is important when we consider transitioning is what is the current maturity of data that we have for reporting and how we have to evolve over time for a smooth transition. So basically we can build on the IR framework only, but we have to identify the data gaps basis the ISSB requirements, and any gaps that are in the information must be taken into account when we talk about the data part. So enhancing our data quality is going to be very important. Data accuracy, data consistency, and reliability to meet the standard requirements shall help in smooth transitioning. Third important aspect is around materiality, because here the materiality is not only about understanding the impacts, but ISSB also wants us to identify how the financial implications of these material topics will be on our business. So providing a contextual information, and establishing a connection between our financial performance and our sustainability metrics is going to be very important when we want to transition. Also quantifying the possible impacts, of our sustainability initiatives will be largely helpful. As I said earlier, seeking continuous feedback from stakeholders forms the most important aspect when we want to transition. And transparency and dialogue is also something that will help us in strengthening our disclosure year on year. Data management and reporting tools, as I said, data maturity has to be in place, because we are transitioning to something which will require in-depth analysis of the material topics, the significance they carry, and the financial impacts they give out on our business. Also, not to mention here, a large amount of cross-functional collaboration will be required within the businesses, because this collaboration will ensure a coordinated approach for a smooth transition for this kind of reporting. So I think by following these steps, companies can effectively navigate the transition to ISSB standards, while they can still maintain transparency and provide valuable information to the stakeholders. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your in-depth analysis. Next, we move on to, in June 2024, we saw the release of Corporate Net Zero Standard by SBTi. The revision emphasizes a 1.5-degree target and requires companies to include all relevant emissions, including the often challenging Scope 3, which covers the entire value chain. Now, companies are expected to provide detailed disclosures on their progress and methodologies with an emphasis on transparent reporting. There's also a new requirement for third-party verification to ensure clarity and credibility of reported data. Sector-specific guidelines are introduced to help companies navigate through unique challenges and opportunities. The new standard also mandates the setting and reporting of near-term interim targets, ensuring companies are on a clear path towards their long-term net zero goals. Well, the revised standards are designed to integrate closely with other international frameworks and initiatives promoting coherency and consistency in sustainability reporting. Thus, the heightened ambition aligns with the latest climate science, pushing companies to set more aggressive targets. Although the final version of these updated standards, the Corporate Net Zero Standard version 2, is expected to be published in the Q4 of 2025. Until then, the current version remains in effect, with companies encouraged to participate in consultation process on the SBTi website. Now, to discuss this particular update in detail, I would like to invite Dr. P. Ram Babu, who is currently the advisor for the Gringo Group, the World Bank Group, and the chairman of FSC. Ram sir holds over 40 years of experience and has been actively engaged in sustainable development through research and consultancy throughout his career. I would request sir to shed some light on what challenges might company face in implementing these more rigorous and comprehensive net zero standards. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mala. Thank you for your generous introduction. Yes, the present guidelines, which are available for stakeholder comments, are significant in themselves by demanding the third-party verification of the targets and the progress, etc. So the third-party verification is very, very important, and it is a significant step. But more important to me is the near-term targets, because the climate change essentially is a stop game. It is not a flow. So if I were to act on net zero only after 2040 to achieve the net zero by 2050, the stock keeps accumulating till 2040. So it is very, very important for companies to actually pace and face their journey towards the net zero beginning today. And that is one reason why a near-term targeting and near-term roadmap, while we are pursuing the longer-term net zero goal, is absolutely important. It is actually actionable. In my opinion, it is rather than a challenge to the companies. It is more practical, more pragmatic, more operable. Okay, they can understand. So it is not just enough to have a net zero by 2050. What will I do? What are the ways and means every 10 years that I will do? But having a near-term targets and a medium-term targets are very, very important, and that's what is brought in by this recent guidelines. That's very, very important. As it is actually on the consultation phase, I would suggest that the many of the stakeholders will definitely contribute to the SBTi new document vis-a-vis their view of offsets. It is very clear that in the scope 3, when I want to achieve my net zero, I will definitely try to go decarbonize my value chain so that my scope 3 emissions will be as far as possible reduced. But when I want to really go for any kind of an offsetting, as of today, SBTi is only on the removals, and the reductions are not actually encouraged. So the reduction offsetting, I think as it is for consultation, I am sure that a number of stakeholders will also argue for how credible reductions, okay, which are not double counted, which are a part of with a government approval of corresponding adjustments, how such reductions can also be incorporated within the SBTI offsets. I think a number of stakeholders will definitely represent in this consultation process. Thanks, Madhav.
Thank you, sir. Next, in another significant update from SBTI, in June 2024, we saw the launch of Financial Institutions Near-Term Criteria version 2. This updated framework offers new insights on setting ambitious emission reduction targets specifically tailored for financial institutions. Now, what are the key changes? The updated criteria aligns with the SBTI corporate net zero standard by raising the minimum ambition for scope 1 and scope 2 emissions from well below 2 degrees Celsius to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This means that financial institutions will need to enhance their climate action plans to meet these higher standards. Additionally, the criteria have been revised to improve clarity, actionability, and usability. This includes streamlined coverage requirements and the introduction of a new criteria for managing fossil fuel finance. Financial institutions are now requested to disclose, halt, transition, and phase out their fossil fuel related activities, reflecting a stronger commitment to sustainability. To dwell deeper into this update, I would like to welcome back Dr. Ram Babu to continue sharing their insights over this important update. So, sir, what according to you would be the practical challenges that institutions might encounter when implementing the new fossil fuel finance targets methods, particularly in a coal-dependent country like India? Additionally, given that the US still utilizes coal from regions like Appalachia, what potential impacts could this have globally? Over to you, sir.
Thank you. This new guidance for the financial institutions, firstly, is a very well-structured guidance. A good definition on in-scope and out-of-scope emissions. A good definition of categorization of the different financial activities. And in all these financial activities, okay, the whole portfolio of the financial institutions, okay, needs to be disclosed, and the disclosure guidance, which is based on the earlier knowledge earlier knowledge available, not necessarily within the SBTI, but even outside the SBTI, is very well documented. I think I encourage your audience to who would like to apply this standard to go through it very carefully. But while saying that, the specific question that you have addressed is that about the fossil fuel. So the standard is very clear that besides disclosing your portfolio emissions, scope 1, scope 2, and in some activities, scope 3, you also need to very clearly tell the audience or the whoever is stakeholders who are reading the report, your disclosure, what is your portfolios, what quantum of your portfolio, okay, is on fossil fuel. And fossil fuel and any value chain of the fossil fuel. It is not necessarily only the fossil fuel based power generation. Any value chain of the fossil fuel. It could be even chemicals, you could be in mining. So the portfolio's investments or the exposure to the complete fossil fuel needs to be disclosed. So in addition to that, this guidance also requires you to carbon intensive sector exposure. You also need to say what are those hard to abate sectors which are identified. And in those hard to abate sectors, what is your exposure? And how are you working towards minimizing that exposure and also minimizing the carbon intensity of those hard to abate sectors? That also needs to be disclosed. Now, the specific question that you asked is that, how does it impact, financial institutions in India or maybe financial institutions in US, or some of the parts of Europe where coal is still not you just cannot discard the coal. But that doesn't seem to be such a big worry. It may be a short-term worry, but even in the medium term, I'm not seeing it as a worry, because today, even in India, you may require certain investments into coal-based power plants only for some time, and that too only because you are not able to build up the energy storage investments and accelerate those investments into energy storage enough. So if you have a proper energy storage and renewable energy capacity, you can combine the RE capacity with the energy storage. It is a proven fact today that you can actually generate an affordable power, which is 24/7, which is cheaper than the new coal-based power plants. However, there will be a challenge in terms of the just transition. We will be able to transition away from coal, and financial institutions also can take steps to go away from coal. But is it just? Okay. What about those regions which are dependent on coal and coal's value chains? Okay. What will happen to those economic components, okay, which are dependent on that particular economic activity? So I think that is one challenge that the financial institutions have to address. And the disclosures requirement also has certain elements there. Now, how do I address that part and disclose my efforts in making the transition just? So I really do not see much of a challenge in this particular requirement for the financial institutions by SBTi. Thanks, Mala.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your valuable insights on both these important updates from SBTi. Now, next on our agenda is an exciting development from the Carbon Disclosure Project, CDP, that could revolutionize how organizations request and manage environmental data. CDP, known for its rigorous climate-related disclosures, has introduced a new portal that streamlines the process for entities to request environmental data from their suppliers, portfolios, or any other stakeholder. Now, what does this mean for entities? Well, it's going to be simpler than ever. Entities can now submit their environmental data request list directly to the CDP portal. Now, this system is designed to make data collection more efficient and comprehensive, helping organizations get a clearer picture of their environmental impacts. Now, what will be the steps involved therein? Supply chain members, banks, private markets, or any other requester can easily build their request list in the CDP portal. They can contact organizations by either adding an email for each one while creating the list, or by sending a register to disclosure forms to them. We'll continue our discussion on this important update from CDP with our very own expert, Dr. P. Ram Babu. So I would request Sir to come and join us again and share his thoughts on how this new updated CDP portal might improve data transparency and accountability for organizations. Over to you, sir.
Mala, I can only be brief here, and it's a very welcome step by the CDP, and somebody needed to take this particular step. It is almost like rewiring Earth. Okay, so a vendor whose data is important for me to understand my Scope 3 emission is also a vendor for 100 other customers, right? So the Earth is, the whole manufacturing system is wired. So you would only require somebody to do this effort, and the whole system, whole data should be available on the cloud, so that each one of us can pull our own requirement of the Scope 3 and go ahead and work with our vendors to take it forward. So it's a very, very welcome step. I am sure that the issues of privacy of information and the security of information, etc., is adequately, and sovereignty of information is also adequately addressed by CDP. I understand that they have addressed. Okay, so information security related regulations in Europe and globally available information security regulations, everything have been taken into account while preparing this particular tool. And one can be rest assured that this portal is very, very useful, and one should only join, support, and take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, continuing with the updates from CDP, they have rolled out a new multi-environmental issue format that consolidates the 3 separate questionnaires which were previously focused on climate change, forest, and water security into a single comprehensive corporate questionnaire. Now, this unified approach aims to simplify, strengthen, and streamline reporting and push companies to align with a 1.5-degree nature positive world. Well, this integration is a strategic move to provide a holistic view of corporate environmental impacts, making it easier for companies to disclose, for stakeholders to understand their broader picture. Now, next we have is, early this month, the Science Based Targets Network, SBTN, released new guidance to help businesses set science-based targets for nature-based impacts. Now, this update builds on a corporate pilot program and supports the SBTN's global initiative, which was launched last year. This update aims at supporting entities better evaluate and address their environmental footprint by exploring mitigation strategies. To understand this update even better, we would like to welcome Ms. Anuradha Singh here. Anuradha ma'am has been into the domain of CDM, carbon markets, carbon finance from the last 15 years. She holds quite a diverse experience into the same, and thus I would like to welcome ma'am to share some insights on how can companies incorporate nature-based solutions into their sustainability strategies effectively. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Mala. Thank you so much. And yes, this is a very innovative initiation by SBTN. And as we know all, the science-based target provides company with clearly defined path to reduce emission in line with Paris Agreement goal. And right now, more than 5,000 companies, businesses are around the world are already working with SBTI. And proceeding into the same direction, SBTN has taken an initiative in nature-based target covering flag, that is forest, land, and agriculture, which were not there in previous target. And as climate-based activity have limit like 1.5-degree warming and net zero emission by 2050, SBTI has come up with suggestion like 30 by 30, which says we need to conserve 30% of total land under forestry till 2030 under flag, which will cover land use changes, land management, land carbon removal process. So all these processes are like the activity through which we can achieve this target. And the goal will also manage the reduction in water quantity, because as we know, without water conservation, this activity is not 100% useful. So including land, this will cover the water also. And it will help to increase the water quality, practice with the practices like decreasing nutrient pollution. And this will help the company to incorporate nature-based solution for climate change target and pursue minimizing impact on nature. The process will follow step-by-step monitoring at a stage of process. The company need to first commit, understand what is their target, and do the accounting, and then submit the target to SBTN. SBTN will help in analyzing and providing technical ways to achieve target in effective and faster way. And currently it is in a pilot process, like currently 17 companies are there, like Nestle, Tesco, and HM Group. But we are very sure that within 2024, there will be a broader release. And this will help more and more companies to achieve the target. Thank you. Thank you, Mala. This is from my side.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your valuable insights. Now, let's take a glance at the status of execution of sustainability reporting in 2024. According to a KPMG survey of the top 1,000 global entities, 90% of organizations plan to increase their sustainability investment over the next 3 years. However, there is a notable disconnect between perception and preparedness. Nearly half of these organizations still rely on spreadsheets for managing their sustainability data. Notably, 59% of leading firms use data systems and 58% are integrating AI for data collection. Additionally, 71% are outsourcing core sustainability activities, of which 45% believe improved data management can integrate sustainability goals with business strategies. 76% are restructuring teams to better align with sustainability goals. The accompanying infographics highlights that 96% of G20 2050 companies report on ESG matters, but fewer than half report on biodiversity loss. With GRI, TCFD, and SDGs form the most of the common reporting frameworks. The United Kingdom leads in reporting across the ESG risk, with significant differences observed in reporting practices between the N100 and G250 companies. Another chart here indicates increasing engagement in sustainability strategies from 2021 to 24, with companies increasingly adopting purpose-driven initiatives and integrating sustainability into a new product development. Sustainability reporting is, well, not just a requirement, but a strategic imperative for engaging stakeholders and driving impactful change. Accurate and transparent reporting helps avoid greenwashing and enhances organization credibility. Well, now this wraps up our first session for today. Next, we turn our attention to a global overview of sustainable development goals and assess how different sectors are progressing. The UN Sustainable Development Goals Report 2024 shows a severe off-track status in achieving the 2030 agenda, with only 17% of SDG targets on track. According to the report, with just 6 years remaining to the 2030 agenda, current progress falls far short of what is required to meet the SDGs. The 2024 report underscores a slow progress across all the 17 SDGs, urging countries to enhance their national climate action plans and investments to achieve the 2030 agenda. The report also indicates that not only countries, but the entire sector and societies are lagging in SDG implementation, highlighting that no sector is fully on track with considerable gaps in achieving the targets. Well, since 2020, the global advancements has stagnant, particularly in SDGs like the SDG of second, which is zero hunger, SDG 11 of sustainable cities, SDG 13 of climate action, SDG 14 of life below water, and SDG 15 of life on land, and also SDG 16, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions. Now, this report underscores the critical sectors such as food, energy, digital connectivity needs significant investments to accelerate progress. Specifically, the food and land systems targets are severely off track, with projections indicating that 600 million people may still face hunger issues by 2030, alongside a global increase in obesity. If we examine the rankings of countries in the global SDG index, the Nordic nations are leading in sustainable development goals, with Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, and France at the top of the list. Meanwhile, the BRICS and BRICS Plus countries, including Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, have demonstrated faster than average progress since 2015. When it comes to East and South Asia, they have shown the most SDG progress since 2015. Also, at the bottom of the ranking are South Sudan, the Central African Republic, and the Chad. The report's findings call for immediate action and increased collaboration across sectors and regions to address these challenges and work towards the 2030 agenda collaboratively. To understand this global scenario better, I would like to invite Mr. V. Krishnamurthy, CEO of FSC. Mr. Krishnamurthy brings about 40 years of experience in finance, HR, and strategy across various industries. So, sir, given your vast experience, what according to you would be the key factors that have contributed to the positive achievements in specific SDGs, such as the Goal 7 of affordable and clean energy, the Goal 12 of responsible consumption and production, and the Goal 17 of partnerships for the goals? I would like to invite you, sir, to share your insights on the same.
Thank you, Mala, for inviting me to answer your positive achievements. Right? I wouldn't have liked to comment on the negative outcomes of SDGs. So thank you for asking me about the positive ones first. So when we talk about goal number 7, affordable and clean energy, okay, essentially what has happened is the Kyoto Protocol of 1997, which came into force in 2005, okay, provided a fillip to establishment of carbon markets. So investment in clean energy projects, technology transfers, and all this happened. And now, once government started seeing, carbon revenues, okay, private entities started supporting and implementing policies favoring renewable energy adoption. Yeah. So there were financial incentives for renewable energy. Carbon revenue generated through the sale of carbon credits provided financial incentives for renewable energy projects. So that and the capacity building and technical assistance, okay, the revenue also funded capacity building initiatives, technical assistance programs, and helped developing countries enhance their capabilities, okay, in managing expanding renewable energy sources. All this contributed to the significant, positive impact of SDG 7. Now, when we talk of goal number 12, which is responsible consumption and production, okay. Now, even before there are basically 3 things that provided a fillip to the positive impact. Okay, one is the extended producer responsibility. Now, even before the extended producer responsibilities kicked in, okay, there have been several supportive judicial rulings which across various countries on EPR policies, which reinforce the principles of EPR, okay, ensuring compliance and accountability for end-of-life product management. Now, EPR policies were pivotal in encouraging manufacturers to take responsibility for their products throughout their entire life cycle. Okay, so and then we also saw that governments, including India, integrated sustainable consumption into their climate policies. Right, the approach promotes resource efficiency and waste reduction. There have been several sector-specific regulations. Plastics, we all know that policies which were aimed at reducing single-use plastics and reducing recycling, enhancing recycling efforts, which have notably decreased plastic waste. Now, batteries, regulations for proper disposal and recycling have addressed hazard waste issues. Tires, okay, EPR schemes for tires have improved recycling and disposal practices. It also several such, including solar panels. Now, not to forget the right to repair movement, okay, consumer rights legislation, the right to repair movement, supports consumer ability to fix and modify their own devices. Now, this would reduce electronic waste and fosters a circular economy. Now, legislative efforts are also underway to ensure manufacturers provide necessary repair parts and information. Okay, so all this has contributed to the positive, outcomes in SDG 12. Now, goal number 17, I really wouldn't be able to. Really, we won't be able to tell you much. Suffice to say that combination of factors, okay, produce robust partnerships, increase financial resources, capacity building efforts, improve data monitoring systems, coherent policies, access to technology, etc., have worked positively for SDG 17 in forming partnerships. Thank you so much, Mala, I suppose.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for showing us the positive side of achieving these specific SDG goals. Now, let's also discuss the other side as well. So for the same, I would like to invite our expert, Mr. Dr. P. Ram Babu here to also shed some light of what main challenges that are there which are hindering the progress towards achieving some of the specific SDGs such as Goal 2 of Zero Hunger, Goal 8 of Decent Work and Economic Growth, and Goal 13 of Climate Action, also including Goal 14 of Life Below Water. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mala. It's a very difficult question, and the report also doesn't dwell onto it. I would have appreciated if the report has gone into what are the factors that are hindering the progress in these SDGs, because that will be more actionable if they really understand. But let me guess. For example, the Goal 2 Zero Hunger. Hunger actually exists in very, very vulnerable communities, right? And also whether it is urban or rural, I'm not talking about that, but very vulnerable communities which have very limited access to various resources and all that. And so many times these resources are subject to nature's vagaries and natural conditions. So the majority of the productive systems where these vulnerable sections of the populations live are not climate resilient. And climate change, for many of us who have all the facilities and resources, still not has impacted our lives. Okay, it's only a news item. Okay, temperatures are increasing, etc., etc. But I have an air conditioner to manage my temperature. But for the vulnerable sections of the populations, far-flung areas, etc., this resilience not being there, and the flash floods and the heat waves and all that is actually damaging the food security. And we have not acted on actually building up the climate resilient agriculture or food systems. So I think that is one factor, and that is related to, again, on Goal 13, the climate action. I think that is contributing to our ability to get to zero hunger goals as envisaged before. Another important factor is that the majority of the governments have withdrawn their public outlay from whether it is the health and nutrition and a number of other sectors, including the education. This is across the world. Good number of governments have withdrawn their budgets. Because of that withdrawal of the budgets, whether it is education, health, etc., not only those SDGs are impacted, but the SDG related to hunger will get immediately impacted. Whenever such an impact occurs, the most vulnerable who are who are amenable to hunger, okay, so they get impacted. So there are two factors that are combined. One is the public outlay, the budget outlays. The second is the climate resilience that is not being built well. Now, coming to climate action, I think there is a delay on climate action, definite delay on climate action. Some people say it's a positive delay. The positive delay is something like this. Should I take a transition step today to reduce my emissions, or should I wait for that net zero technologies that are getting developed a little later, maybe another 5 years or 2 years or 3 years? For example, if I am in steel industry, should I scrap my blast furnace today, or should I wait for a more efficient blast furnace, or so electric arc furnace run on renewable electricity, or a DRI run with hydrogen? So this whole technology questions of transition, are delaying the process of the climate action. So another thing, sometime back in the this discussion, I emphasized that the climate is a stock question. It is not about getting to net zero at 2050, but it is acting today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow equally till 2050. Every day I need to reduce my emissions to reach net zero by 2050. So accelerating climate action is absolutely important. But this technological uncertainty, I think, is the waiting for a bigger opportunity and not doing something today is leading to inaction. It is not only in terms of technological choices, but even in policy choices, there is a lot of inaction. For example, Article 6 implementation of the Paris Climate Agreement has not yet occurred. And when does it supposed to start? By 2020. When it is supposed to end? By 2030. So you are already nearer to midpoint, and the Article 6 implementation and Article 6 credits are not out. So I think there is a delay in climate action because of policy ambiguity, uncertainty, and technology uncertainty and ambiguity. I think that needs an attention, and this report has rightly brought it to the point. Similarly, the life below water, I think that needs an important focus today, and there hasn't been that focus earlier. Life below water, and decent work and economic growth is again related to the type of activities that I said. The people who are not able to access decent work are the vulnerable sections of the population, and again the public outlay has been withdrawn from those sections across the globe, and that is also impacting the decent work. Decent work again gets related to education, health and well-being, and also the improvement in manufacturing activity, etc., etc. So I think I did some justice, but a lot of research needs to be done. Why we could not get to these goals as we envisaged earlier. We need to understand those factors so that we can address those factors. So I hope I have at least shed some light on this. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your valuable thoughts. They were quite insightful. And yes, we agree that some kind of research is really needed in this particular area. Well, the Global SDG Progress Report paints a challenging picture, but also presents an opportunity for us to recalibrate our strategies and commitments. As we conclude this session, the need for heightened global commitment and innovative solutions remains paramount. Now, let's focus on India's performance in this area. In our final segment, we turn our focus to India's standing in the Global Sustainable Development Goals Index. Well, India is ranked 109th in the Global SDG Index with an overall score of 64. Now, this ranking reflects the country's progress across various goals, but also underscores the challenges that remain. Only around 30% of the SDG targets are on track or have been achieved. Meanwhile, 40% of the targets show limited progress, and in about 30% of targets, the situation is worsening. India has although demonstrated notable achievements in specific goals, particularly in the goal 1 of no poverty, goal 4 of quality education, goal 12 of responsible consumption and production, and goal 13 of climate action. Well, now this was the global scenario, but now we shift our focus to Niti Aayog's SDG index, which has a little bit of different picture to show us. The charts here provide a comprehensive overview of India's progress in achieving the SDGs. The data reveals some encouraging trends as well as areas needing more attention. Firstly, India has seen a notable improvement in its overall SDG score, moving from 57 in 2018 to 71 in 23-24. This steady progress indicates positive strides in multiple areas. However, while the improvement in the overall SDG score is promising, it's crucial to note that only a few SDGs have reached the achiever level. Most goals still fall within the performer or front runner categories, indicating that while progress is being made, it is not yet at the pace needed to meet the 2030 agenda. And thus, significant work is needed to catch up with other goals. Now, the table here outlines the implementation status of Sustainable Development Goals initiatives across different states and union territories in India. The data here highlights that states have generally made more progress in implementing and managing SDG initiatives compared to union territories, which are significantly lagging behind. However, it's concerning that quite few states have developed block indicator frameworks and linked SDGs to their budget allocations. Next, we move on our attention to the impact of corporate social responsibility spending on the Sustainable Development Goals in India. The chart here displayed provides a breakdown of how companies are allocating their CSR budgets across different sectors. While there is substantial investment in education, PWD and livelihood programs, also in critical areas of healthcare, poverty, and sanitation, the relatively lower funding in areas like gender equality and environmental conservation suggests that there's still room for a more balanced and comprehensive approach to CSR spending. Additionally, the report by Niti Aayog indicates a substantial growth in reporting across companies. As reported, 75% of Indian companies have established clear sustainability goals, with 84% voluntarily disclosing their targets. However, the remaining 25%, which constitute mostly SMEs, remain hesitant to engage in these discussions. When it comes to sector-specific, manufacturing, chemical, healthcare sectors are leading in sustainable practices. However, there is a notable lag in other sectors. Well, India's progress in sustainability is commendable, yet there is still a long way to go. It requires the collective efforts of all the sectors to fully realize the SDGs. Now, that brings us to the end of the session. Before we wrap up, I would like to thank our team at the Forum for Sustainable Enterprises for their invaluable contributions in making this broadcast possible. Also, a special thank you to our expert panelists for their valuable insights. I would also now request the audience to take a moment to fill out the feedback form that has been shared in the chat. Your input is going to be valuable and will help us improve our future broadcasts. Adding to this, at the Forum for Sustainable Enterprises, we are dedicated to driving the transition to Net Zero 2050, the circular economy, and the UN SDGs. Since our inception, we have been a collaborative hub for businesses, governments, and thought leaders, fostering partnerships that make a global impact. Now, you can discover more about our initiatives and also join us in making a sustainable future reality by visiting at fsc.org.in. Now, as we embark on this journey towards sustainability, I would also like to invite all our viewers present here to be a part of it. We welcome partners, reporters, contributors, and anyone passionate about sustainability to join us in sharing stories and making a difference. Thank you again for joining us on sustainability this month. See you next month, and until next time, stay sustainable. Goodbye.